Well, it is my pleasure to be here again to introduce another top restored people leader. And as I talk about often, when we think about restored leaders, we're thinking about people who are curious, who ask why and sit with others. Leaders who are showing up to be proactive and to do no harm when they are working with others and developing them, and to think about the cultures, the organizations, the relationships we're in as gardens that we as leaders are here to cultivate, to renew, and to grow out of that already exist. So it's my pleasure today to introduce Riane Eisler, who is one of our top restored people leaders, to share more about her work and her perspective that she brings to leading and working with other people. So thank you for being here, Riane.
It's a pleasure to be with you. And as you know, my organization, the Center for Partnership Systems, well, especially my books, The Real Wealth of Nations, and the subtitle is Creating a Caring Economics, are very much in point because the larger context for this is really not only a shift from one, industrial, focusing on manufacturing, which employed most people, to the post-industrial knowledge service era, but the cultural shift that is essential uh, to go along with that technological shift. When economists, even who live in some alternative reality, I think, with their rational man and all of that, uh, but even they keep talking about what we need for this new age is high quality human capital, creative, resilient people, people who can solve problems rather than just taking or giving orders. And that's exactly what is beginning to happen. And it is really a shift from this top down command control model of leadership, of management, to a model that is more based on inspiring, on empowering. I mean, even the term empowering uh, is a new term, isn't it? So
Absolutely.
we need to coin new words, and I have, because I call the old system that we've inherited from even more rigidly top-down times in families, in businesses, in societies, a domination system. And what we're trying to move toward is a partnership system. And I got that title, partnership, that term partnership, not from just working together, because people can work together in domination systems and do, cartels, gangs, etc. But also because what struck me in searching for a term to describe this system was a business partnership, where, at least in theory, the partners are to be mutually accountable, to really have it be mutually beneficial, uh, and they have mutual responsibility. And that is really the core of the partnership system. So we are trying to change our organizations, our businesses,
Right.
as well as our families,
Yeah.
because it's very much depends on what we're taught. And families are primary socialization agencies. And of course, our government policies. I mean, President Biden has tried to really help people with paid parental leave, talking about families,
Mhm.
uh, with more caring policies. And in domination systems, caring is coded feminine and hence devalued in this
Right.
top down male superior, female inferior, male dominant, female dominated system. So
Well
in
said.
our organizations, that's what's happening. It's part of a cultural shift, not only
Exactly.
of the organization, but of the society.
Yes. I love the way that you're explaining that because I think we don't talk enough about the feminine and male energy that is connected to those types of decision making or the types of roles and work that we pay for. And I actually feel like this is a good lead to my next question because if we think about that, the cultivation of culture being like a garden, I would love for you to explain to us what would be the difference between a gardener that is working from domination or a gardener that is starting from that perspective that you were just sharing with us of caring, of being restorative and proactive in partnership with their community.
Well, that's an interesting analogy because, of course, a garden that we're trying to shift from this top down,
Right.
fertilizer dependent, chemically dependent, to really a garden that's in harmony with nature.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we've all been told these stories about human nature that
Mm.
contradict the reality. And my latest book, Nurturing Our Humanity, uh, really addresses this. The subtitle is How Domination and Partnership Shape Our Brains, Lives, and Future. And the book draws heavily from neuroscience as well as from other biological and social sciences. It's very, very accessible, by the way, even though it was published by a very academic press, Oxford University Press. Uh, but what it points out is that we have the capacity built into us by
Mhm.
the grace of evolution for both caring and cruelty.
Mhm.
Uh, but as we develop more in a human direction, caring becomes paramount. I mean, we cannot survive
Right.
as babies without, for our first years, we're totally helpless
Right.
without some degree of caring. And it's really, if anything, I would say our proclivity is in that direction, but, and it's a big but,
Mhm.
depends on our cultural environment. Which of our human capacities for caring, for consciousness, for creativity,
Right.
or for cruelty, for insensitivity, uh, yes, for destructiveness,
Mm.
nature and of humans, really,
Yes.
is addressed. What counts, see, we've been taught stories about original sin, we've been taught stories about selfish genes, and they're simply not true. They're false stories.
Mhm.
Uh, they came out of much more rigid domination times.
Right.
We have to understand that. So my work tells new stories. And
Right.
that is what we need to understand. That is gene expression and the nature versus nurture. That it's not genes. It is the interaction of our genes with our environments, which for humans are primarily cultural and are very different depending to the degree on which an organization, a culture, a society, a family,
Mm.
everything orients to either the partnership side or the domination side of the partnership domination scale because it's always a matter of degree.
Sure. Yes. Thank you. I so appreciate you sharing that with us because I think that is the realm of possibilities we live in is creating new words, new language, sharing stories and creating narratives that we can spread further and farther to share the partnership and the collaboration that already exists and to nurture and build off of that. And so thank you for explaining to us that scale that we are experiencing all the time between domination and partnership. I want to ask you about, a very American specific question around slavery and anti-Blackism. And I'm wondering from your perspective, when we think about the concept of a caring economy and partnership, how does that apply when we are dealing with racial issues in America?
Well, domination systems are based on in groups versus out groups,
Mhm.
starting really with a gendered model of our species. I mean, there are two basic forms in our species. I mean, we are today beginning to understand what has been the case forever,
Mhm.
that there are many people in between, uh,
Right,
LGBT people, uh, trans people, etc.
right.
But there are these two basic forms,
Mhm.
and gender is not just a quote women's issue, as
Right.
we've been taught in this marginalized way. It is a key social, family, and economic organizing principle.
Mhm.
So let's again, the anti-racism movement of our time is really part of the shift from a domination in-group versus out-group system, because it's not coincidental, if you have not noticed, that the people who are racist tend to also cling like crazy to not only these rigid gender stereotypes,
Yes.
which are needed in order, how else are you going to rank masculinity and men
Right.
over women and quote femininity?
Right.
And the fact of the matter is that this system harms everyone.
Mhm.
Number one, I mean, it harms men. Look, men have had to give in rigid domination systems like Putin in Russia right now.
Mm.
Putin wants more real estate, and men are supposed to give their lives
Right.
because this guy on top wants more real estate, much
Right.
more control. I mean, and men have had to suppress part of their humanity.
Absolutely.
They do get emotions, they get contempt and anger. But the
Mhm.
quote soft, so-called feminine emotions, vulnerability,
Yes.
caring, no, I mean,
Right.
that's not part of the definition of a quote real man. And neither a very short time ago, actually, and I do think of time, a short time in terms of hundreds of years, okay?
I do too. I do too.
Because we've been here for a long time, the
Mhm.
species, and for most of our time here, as the book that I'm best known for, The Chalice and the Blade, Our History, Our Future, which is now in its 57th US printing and about 30 foreign editions. As I point out, and I give evidence which is coming in like crazy now, for most of our history on this planet, we lived in societies that oriented more to the partnership rather than the domination side. And in nurturing our humanity, um, uh, you know, this includes the millennia, the thousands of years that we lived in gathering, hunting, and foraging societies.
Right.
But I won't go into that. You can read The Chalice and the Blade, you can read Nurturing Our Humanity. But the point of it is that we can, this is realistic
Mhm.
and this is necessary.
Mhm.
And yes, it does mean starting with the prototypical in-group and domination systems, which is men. You know, it used to be called that the public sphere was the men's world.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, that's not coincidental. And both capitalism and socialism
Mhm.
adopted this gendered system of values and perpetuated it. And it's even perpetuated by GDP.
Mhm.
And,
Absolutely.
I mean, where a tree, uh, these old uh, economic systems that came out of early industrial times leave out the three life-sustaining sectors. the natural economy, the volunteer community economy, and the household economy.
Mm-hmm.
And so a tree is only part of GDP when it is dead, when it's a log.
Right.
I mean, and the work of caring for people in households is still, as in Marx's and in Smith's, the fathers
Yeah.
of capitalism and socialism, as in their time, done for free, mostly by women,
Mm-hmm.
and in most world regions, alas, in a male-controlled household. And that has to change.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I love this conversation, and I would also like to say, please read The Chalice and the Blade. I think everyone needs to read that book. Please listen to what she's saying and think about this in that grander scale. But as we think about this last few years, even where we have seen so much movement towards diversity, equity, and inclusion, where we have seen movement to support trans communities and to support women in different ways, while also women are still being attacked within society and policy. I'm wondering if you have any insights to how you see the current diversity, equity, inclusion movement actually moving towards partnership. How do you see that helping society in general and that whole narrative shifting, as you've talked about?
It's being fiercely resisted,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, by those who think that there are only two alternatives. You either dominate or you're dominated.
Right.
That is not the only alternative. There is also working together and caring. Caring is a human emotion. As so many men who are caring for babies show, doing the feeding babies, the diapering babies, the women's work, right?
Right.
Uh, so the diversity movement, the women's movement, the men's movement, these are all parts, and unfortunately, uh, they're all disconnected because we still do not have this frame
Mm-hmm.
of the domination partnership scale. And I'm working to get that out because everything falls into place once you do.
I feel similarly. I think especially when it comes to language, it's so triggering and there's so much emotion connected to it. And when we start to silo out the oppression, it can start to even get more triggering than to realize that it's an entire system that's oppressing everyone and that is creating narratives that are untrue that continue things like slavery and inaccurate economic systems that do not reward those who have the skills or the expertise within those areas. So I wonder if you can also then talk to us a little bit about how, when we are looking to celebrate the partnership work that's already happening in the world, how we can do that from this restorative leader perspective, right? Of seeking proactive, no harm engagement together that removes domination. What should we be looking for in the world to note that, and how do we celebrate that more?
First comes the recognition
Mm-hmm.
that what we're doing is culture change.
Mm-hmm.
And from what to what, right?
Right.
And if you are talking about organizations, uh, they're a microcosm, just as families. I mean, they don't arise in a vacuum.
Right.
And we are living in a period where this struggle for our future,
Mm-hmm.
climate change, uh, empowerment, the technology shifts, everything is very, very real because the old domination system is beginning to reach its logical end
Mm-hmm.
with the conquest and
Mm-hmm.
domination of nature.
Right.
But it's also, look, uh, in our organizations, we have the opportunity to do more,
Mm-hmm.
um, and to show. Well, I'm gonna really talk about some of the new language I've introduced
Wonderful. Thank you.
organizations, and one is hierarchy. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we don't want to, so to speak, throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Right.
We when you have a complex system, any system, you really, any human system, you need parents, you need teachers, you
Right.
need managers, you need leaders. But there's a difference that we need to note between what I call hierarchies of domination. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we're all familiar with those. You better obey, or else there's going to be pain in a rigid domination system, even death.
Right. Absolutely.
And hierarchies of actualization.
Mm-hmm.
And in a hierarchy of actualization, that's very different from a hierarchy of domination, because accountability, respect, benefit doesn't just flow from the bottom up.
Right.
It flows both ways. So the term transparency, which is a new term too, isn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, you can't have transparency in a domination system.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't ask
I
questions
mean,
in a domination system.
because, you know, uh, not, the leader cannot be transparent. Um, and there is so much science too, and I'm going to really wonder about here,
Mm.
about participatory organizations are much more effective.
Mm.
If people and caring organizations are much more effective, because when people feel that they and their families are cared for, they want that organization to succeed. Unfortunately, we don't have the government policies. We really need government policies that support caring policies.
Mm-hmm.
And we we can see how effective they are in nations such as Finland,
Yeah.
Sweden, Norway, Denmark. These Nordic nations uh, have a very, they're not socialists, they have a very healthy business sector, precisely because they have caring policies, universal health care, universal child care, accessible child care, very generous paid parental leave. And frankly, uh, they don't even call themselves socialists. They call themselves very often caring societies.
Right.
And it's not because they're relatively small or homogeneous,
Mm-hmm.
because think of all the relatively small homogeneous societies that are very domination oriented in our.
Right.
Let's be realistic here. Uh, it is because they have more caring policies, and that goes along with raising the status of women and of the quote feminine and masculine being redefined, which is happening again. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's movement in that direction. So, to get back to the inclusion diversity movement, to get back to really what we're seeing, which is this recognition that uh, the leader of a hierarchy of actualization who empowers people, who
Mm-hmm.
guides people, is more effective than this command and control style that we've inherited. I mean, this is not about blame or shame.
Right. Exactly.
And it's certainly not about blaming our parents.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
this happened in the course of the shift from a partnership direction to a domination direction. And a lot of what's happening now is reversing that shift. But there are four cornerstones that we have got to address. One, I've already mentioned, family and childhood. I mean, it's all very well to talk about this high quality human capital, but as I said, we know from neuroscience that whether or not we have these resilient, creative people who can solve problems, uh, who aren't stuck in this in group versus out group. very ineffective model in our inextricably connected, technologically connected by communications, by uh, transportation, by even technologies of destruction, frankly, that's
Absolutely.
been we can't go back. We have to go with what, once the technology is out of the bottle, so to speak, it's like a genie. It never can be pushed
It's
back
true.
in.
Speed at which it takes over and moves forward. Yeah, so fast.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we have to, and you know that the people pushing us back pay a lot of attention to both childhood, which,
Mm,
and family and gender. I mean, take Putin. He, a few years ago, radically reduced the penalty for family violence. Can you imagine?
no, I did not know that.
But most people don't because we're taught whether we want change or resist change.
Hmm.
Resisting change is really futile. I mean, it happens whether you want it or not. Putin reduced it because he recognizes the integral connection which is made by the domination partnership social scale between a top-down, authoritarian, rigidly male-dominated, highly punitive, and yes, often violent family
Hmm.
with a state that has these same characteristics. Because people are brought up to accept that kind of state. So I mean, yes, a rigidly top-down, authoritarian, punitive, male-dominated, violent state like Putin's Russia right now.
Right,
So we really have to understand that we've been socialized for this.
right.
Even those of us who no longer want to live this way, who recognize how damaging it has been, not only to women and to children, but to
Everyone.
men. And domination economics creates artificial scarcities, whether it's an ancient Chinese emperor or an Arab sheikh or an Indian pasha, or trickle down
Right.
economics. Because what are we told? The message is identify with those on top, like you're told in a highly punitive family. It's your fault. Somehow you deserve to have a lot of pain.
Hmm.
Uh, and look, I mean, we are not built to content ourselves with the scraps falling from the opulent tables of those on top, as in feudal times. And that's what we're trying to change, to not have everybody be the same. That's not the point, but to not equate difference with either dominating or being dominated, with either being served or serving, with
Right.
either superiority or inferiority, starting with this very, these two different human forms.
Right. In restorative process, we talk about that as working with people, getting away from doing to them or doing for them, but working with them. And I hear you exactly that that is that shift away from those authoritarian domination experiences that we each had, which is to start creating new experiences of meeting people where they're at and wanting to understand need and starting to line up outcomes. My desires and your desires all can work together and we can all serve each other to get to those outcomes or to those desires.
Well, the chalice and the blade are really two symbols for power.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the blade is the very a symbol, very apt symbol of the power
Right.
of the blade, uh, the power to dominate, to control, to take life. But there's also another power,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the power of the chalice to give life, to nurture life, uh, to illuminate life.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't uh, really understand what's happening in our time if you don't understand that we're shifting from this power as power over to power with, and yes, also power too. The
Mm-hmm.
power that is suppressed unless it serves to maintain domination systems of human creativity.
Right. Yes, yes, exactly. I think that working towards power with is exactly the model when it comes to all of these isms or spaces of impression, right? It's shifting that hierarchy perspective, as you were just talking about, from being authoritarian to working with and cultivating an accountability back and forth, right? That transparency and accountability you spoke of. You
Well,
have mentioned, oh, I'm sorry, please go on.
oh, I was going to say the issue isn't who's on top,
Right,
it's changing the system. I
right.
mean, just having a different group on top is not the point.
No, exactly. I think
It,
that's a lot
it,
of our
it
pain.
just won't work.
Exactly. Within my work of working around racial identity, community culture engagement, I find that that is often a lot of the pain is that we are just trying to supplant often maybe a new group to be the authoritarian dominators rather than recognizing the oppressive system of pain that we've created for everyone in domination and that actually is what we want. We want collaboration. We want partnership. We want innovation, right? We want to be
We
solution
want,
oriented
and
and
we
do
want
that.
caring.
Yes, we want compassion and caring. And
We
I,
don't, and that's not just feminine, quote
no,
unquote. That's human.
exactly. Yeah, I often talk with others about how compassion is our empathy in action, right? The feeling of understanding someone's need, but then moving towards working towards that. And if we had compassionate societies, we'd have more ways to call people in. We'd have more ways to help them learn and to heal and to try again, and to understand that that's the human process rather than pushing them out or removing them, and supplanting them, which I think is always the fear in a domination culture.
Well, and we've all internalized this system,
Mhm.
even those on the bottom.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, we need new possibilities,
Yes.
new ways of relating. It's all about relationships, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is why I'm so excited to have you sharing because I think that that is really the center of being a restored leader is that focus on relationship, trust, knowing yourself and others, and showing up in that respectful, accountable way that means that we will know what's going on, we will help make cooperative decisions, and we will even fix those if they were not the right ones because we have a space to be compassionate and to learn as we go. I,
And
oh, go on.
I was going to say, and we do need leaders, and we do need parents, and we do need managers.
Yes,
But the question really comes down to how power is conceptualized and used. And that's the big question, isn't it?
yes.
Because just to change who's on top is not the point.
Finding again and celebrating where that work is already happening is so important because to the point you've made many times our experiences over generations over centuries have been domination. This is the society of relationship that we're used to, and so when we talk about wanting to be more collaborative, wanting to show up differently and work with people instead of over them, I think often we don't quite know what that means, or we don't know how that looks or plays out because we haven't experienced it. And so, elevating the people who are already doing that and letting people see that, experience it, I think is really important.
And I think it's important to recognize that in most situations, uh, certainly we need someone who makes a decision.
Yes.
But hierarchies of actualization are more flexible and
Mm,
they take advantage of uh, everyone's knowledge, and
right.
therefore they're more effective. And frankly, what passes for respect in domination settings is fear.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. Fear and shame, right? Which is again what we're
Yeah.
trying to move away from, create new narratives around. I have been very excited about the different ideas you were sharing with us today that, other people may not be aware of, that I'm still learning about. So I'm wondering, as we wrap up this conversation, if you would just highlight for us what is happening in your world that you would love people to be paying attention to and excited about, and how they can learn more about your work and engage in this concept of partnership and creating that.
Well, first of all, I really want to say that I recommend very highly that you read, and all of those who are uh, watching, listening, uh, read The Real Wealth of Nations, because deconstruction, just saying, critiquing what is not enough. You really need reconstruction. And
Yes.
that book recommends a different, yes, we need markets. We don't happen to have a free one. And yes, we need enlightened government policies, but that's not enough.
Right.
We need to shift these antiquated. I mean, look, both capitalism and socialism came out of the 1700s and
Exactly.
1800s, early industrial times. We're now in the 21st century post-industrial era. So it proposes a new economics, a new caring economics of partnerism. And there was an article in Forbes um, called You've Met the Fathers of Capitalism and Socialism, Now Meet the Mother of Partnerism,
Mhm.
that I highly recommend. Um, but I really think you should read that book because it goes into detail, and there are tons of resources, tons of short articles,
Mhm.
speeches at centerforpartnership.org. It's our website of the Center for Partnership Systems. And I highly, highly recommend you go to it. And there's even a way of going, uh, well, there's a course that we offer online called Changing Our Story, Changing Our Lives, because one of the four cornerstones is story and language. And
Mhm.
I've emphasized both. Another cornerstone is economics. We can't just put add-ons
Right.
to this old system, which is so crazy. We need
Right.
new metrics. We've been working on those.
Mhm.
Social wealth, economic indicators that recognize the economic value of
Mhm.
the work of caring for nature, yeah, which is
Absolutely.
not part of either socialist or capitalist
No.
theory, and caring for people starting at birth.
Mhm.
That is, it isn't just working together, as important as that is.
Mhm.
It's our values. What do we value? And if we don't value caring, if we code it feminine and devalue it
Mhm.
and not recognize that it's intrinsically human
Right.
and that we don't survive without caring, um, and that this in-group versus out-group thinking and all of this gendered system of values, they're not adaptive.
Right.
I mean, Mother Earth is going to really, well, you see what's happening today, these extreme heat and extreme cold. I mean, there was no intrinsic reason why industrial technology is values neutral. It
Right.
depends on
Right.
whether it's governed by an ethos of partnership or
Right.
an ethos of domination, a caring ethos or an ethos of control and conquest
Mhm.
of other people and of nature.
Yes, which is a historical narrative we know has been written for a very long time. So, what I'm hearing is for us to start finding those solutions in the work and the partnership that are coming from your organization and the books that you have written, and to gather and to start putting those to application within our own lives and spaces and expertise areas that we work. It's very
And
exciting. Thank you.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because this, I mean, what this work offers, the partnership domination social scale or the partnership domination biocultural, because it is biocultural lens, it
Yeah.
is a start in a different direction.
Mhm.
It's up to our human creativity to really fill in the blanks and to build this new way of living, of making a living.
Yes.
Um, and and that's the exciting thing. It's a challenge.
Exactly.
And it is certainly also an opportunity as well as a crisis.
Exactly. It's an opportunity in the crisis. I think that's the perfect way to frame this. And thank you so much for doing this with us. Rian, it's been wonderful to have you. I think that what you've shared is invaluable. And I encourage everyone to go to the website, to go to the journal. I know myself, I find so much
Oh,
inspiration from your journal that you offer through the Center for Partnership.org. And if you'd like to speak about that, please do.
oh, yes, we also have a journal. It's called the Interdisciplinary Journal of Partnership Studies. It's online, peer-reviewed, free access, comes out of the University of Minnesota.
Mhm.
And um, do we're celebrating our 10th anniversary with
Yes,
the
congratulations.
and you might want to submit an article
You know,
to
I
the
should. I
university.
really
You
should.
really should.
I have always been very inspired by that journal because, to your point, it's so fantastic to see these ideas being played out in all these different venues of space where experts are applying and creating partnership society and partnership culture. And it's what I then have been inspired to do when I work with organizations is to, again, to look at that spectrum of domination and to start moving us towards collaboration and partnership in truer, genuine, authentic ways. So, yes, I appreciate that encouragement and encourage others to go get inspired by this work.
Well,
So thank you.
I think it's all in our hands because
Yeah.
uh, all of the progressive social movements, starting with the so-called rights of man movement of the 1700s, uh, the abolitionist movement, and today the Black Lives Matter movement, civil rights movement, the feminist movement, the women's movement, all the way to the environmental movement, challenging our once hallowed and idealized conquest and domination of nature. They're part of the movement from domination to partnership, but we are all part of this movement.
Yeah.
And it's up to us. And it's up to us to no longer devalue caring for nature and caring for people starting at birth because they're fundamentals.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ryan. I so appreciate your time and you sharing with us today. You are
Well,
one of
I
our top
appreciate
20
it.
leaders because of this. So thank you.
Oh, well, I am passionate about this, as you can tell.
Yes.
All right.
You brought a new
Bye.
language. So thank you. Bye
Bye.
bye. We appreciate you. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this exclusive interview with Riane Eisler, please check out our upcoming Top Restored People Leader interviews. As always, stay connected and stay restored.